to Bloody Good Horror, covering the best and worst of the horror genre since Halloween 2007. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello everybody and welcome to another exciting episode of Bloody Good Horror. My name's Eric and I'll be your host for this evening, where we will be discussing the Purge Anarchy, the most American of movie traditions. I'm the editor-in-chief over at bloodygoodhorror.com. Joining me tonight on the second go-round, our second attempt at recording this show. First off, from the new class, he's just like living in Hollywood, being all fancy and shit, meeting celebrities. His name is Evan.
Hey everybody.
Evan's like, oh, Leo DiCaprio isn't here? I don't think I can be here tonight.
He was so friendly, guys, just gotta say.
Besties now. Next up on the show, he's the host of the Instamatic. He also is a writer of horror fiction and Indiana resident. His name's Casey.
Hello.
And last up joining us tonight, also from BGH, the new class, her name is Sophie.
Hey y'all, I didn't get any kind of fun introduction.
I was trying to remember what my nickname for you was. I think you were the Queen of Sass or something, because you sassed me that one time.
Yeah, because that one time I shushed you.
I should bring that up in the video here.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Why did no one make a GIF of that, fans?
No, somebody did. It's in the video right now. They made a GIF of it and they put text on it, so you knew what you were saying.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's pretty perfect. We're here tonight to review Purge Anarchy. We tried to do this last night, had some technical difficulties. I'm going to take that one, you guys. That's on me. But we are here tonight. Everything seems to be working okay. Rocking it out. We wanted to review this because the Purge election year is coming up this summer. And we figured I have to know what happened with all the anarchy before we could review that one. So that's why we're here tonight doing this film. Other stuff going on at BGH. Evan, tell me about this little tweet with BGH thing. Usually it's just Mark telling us, but now we get it right from the superstar himself.
Well, actually, I'm gonna, pass this to Sophie because I feel like she has been the pioneer behind this. I am just a lowly servant to her and her planning of this.
That makes us sound like Pinky in the Brain, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm down.
So, after a long hiatus, Tweet with BGH is coming back, and it's been slightly retooled, so we're not going to be picking a franchise and going week after week and exhausting everyone, including ourselves. So, we're going to come back this Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We are watching Urban Legend from 1998. It's going to be magical. There is a Thirsty Thursday game on the site, so everyone can tweet and play along with us, and that is Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Like all good 90s slashers, has kind of an amazing 90s cast.
Yeah,
Josh.
Who's the star? I don't even remember.
Jared Leto, Joshua Jackson. Who isn't the star of that movie?
Jared Leto,
Noxzema
Joshua
girl.
Jackson, Danielle.
Noxzema girl, whatever her name is. The actual protagonist, I don't think, is known for
Rebecca
anything.
Gayheart. Danielle Harris plays a goth an internet goth chick. I was joking about that on Twitter a couple weeks ago.
Yes, she does.
It's crazy. She's looking for dudes on the net for sex stuff, like you did in the 90s.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
If Mark were here, he'd make an ASL joke. So the main actress did more stuff in the 90s. I am positive that the two of you guys won't remember this, but Casey, I don't know if you remember when Sybil Shepherd had her own sitcom there for a hot minute in the 90s. The girl who played her daughter is the star of Sophie. Do you remember that?
Who doesn't remember
I
that?
actually remember that, Eric. So.
Nice. High fives. Awesome.
But she's still relevant because she was just on The Walking Dead.
Oh, was she? Okay.
Oh my
Very
gosh,
cool,
I
very
totally
cool.
didn't recognize her.
Yeah.
Mind.
That was that sitcom was in the era where I would I just watched so much television all the time that it didn't matter how terrible something was. I would watch every piece of shit sitcom. This is why I know that Nurses is my favorite show ever. So
Wow.
There's a deep cut. We bring that up. Joe's the only other person on earth that's seen Nurses. So yeah, yes. What else we got going on? We have we were looking at the upcoming theatrical films here for BGH next week. Casey, what do we got next week?
So originally we had a little jam called Before I Wake that we were going to take in next week, but that has been bumped according to Box Office Mojo, which means we're moving up Hardcore Henry.
We are freed up to guilt-free review Hardcore Henry,
Yes.
which I'm pretty excited about. Sophie, Evan, have either of you guys been seeing the trailers for this?
Yeah.
For Hardcore Henry,
Yeah.
I've actually
I'm not
already
convinced
seen
that
the
it won't.
movie.
You guys.
Living in Hollywood.
I'm gonna hold back my
Don't
thoughts.
say anything. Sophie,
I
what
won't say anything.
are you thinking about Hardcore Henry?
So my main thought so far is that I'm not entirely convinced that I won't vomit if I try to watch that movie theater. I mean, it looks really awesome. The idea is fantastic, but I just don't know that I'm going to be able to watch it on a big screen.
Yeah, exactly.
I might have to wait.
I think I can handle it. I don't know.
Just bring like a doggy bag just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just hoping I don't puke too.
Eric just was like,
No, I was looking at something else. Yeah, no, I did kind of worry that during the trailers, because even during the trailers, it's a little like when you see it, it's different when you're watching on your screen at home, but when you're in a theater and it's like giant in front of you, it's a little like, oh God, oh my God. Evan, just speak on that. How did you feel about the vomitness of the film?
It's one of those experiences, I'll say, that at first you're like, whoa, but then you get kind of used to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like being on a ride where you feel like this is a little too much, but then your body just kind of tenses up and relaxes finally at some point, and you're like, all right, I'm
You kind
with
of just
it.
described
when in the
life.
process do you shit yourself?
You just get used to it. It just keeps flowing
Like-
out, and you just sit there in it.
Pretty much any shitty thing in life, like you start out tense and then eventually you just let it happen to you and you're just like, whatever.
That's apparently how it works for me, but
Yeah.
you know.
What'd your
Um,
best buddy Leo think of it?
You know, I haven't asked him yet, but I will talk to him and let you know what he thinks.
I'll shoot
We
him
all
a
know you guys shared popcorn. Don't lie to us.
I'll shoot him a
no, we
Snapchat.
shared candy, not popcorn. I never share popcorn.
By the way, we're on Snapchat.
What?
Speaking of things young people do,
Wait, so what's the Snapchat name?
it's at BG Horror, and it's the best part of this whole thing is that it's just Joe. Pretty much, I did get the login. I was gonna go in and check it out, but I have not yet. So it's pretty much just Joe.
I'm
That's a
friends with
Snapchat.
BGH, and I still haven't gotten anything from Joe, so I'm sad about it.
You should
I'm
send.
adding
We
right
should
now.
send him notes right now. Everyone listening, all of you 18-year-olds out there, send him Snapchats.
Down.
It would be amazing if we got one through right now from Joe.
I'm sending one to him of the podcast.
Nice.
Yeah, but you figure we got at least an hour while he sits there and tries wondering why his phone's making noises.
One last thing here, just because I have a podcast, so I want to use the talk about this thing. Let's all take a moment to have a collective nerdgasm over the Rogue One trailer, if we could.
Yay.
It's I walked into work this morning, and my coworker, who knows me well, was like, "Did you see the Rogue One trailer?" And I went, "No, let's watch it right now." And then they cut to the shot of the walker things on sand, like on a beach somewhere, and I just went, "Oh my God, they're on sand now. What is happening?" But I don't know, it looks pretty amazing. Casey, how do you feel about the whole idea of the spin-offs?
I think the ideas of Star Wars spin-offs is fantastic. It's something like growing up, I always wish there was more than just the trilogies. So yeah, I am stoked to see what they come out with.
Evan?
I'm all Star Wars all the time, so I was stoked just for the fact that we finally get a look at it. I've heard people say that they don't think that Felicity Jones is tough looking. I disagree. I thought she was
you know
awesome.
who else isn't
I was
really?
a little nervous
Yeah.
at first, but I think it looks legit.
But Carrie Fisher's not super tough looking either, and she was the heroine of that first movie.
Right.
Oh, I know, yeah,
You know,
totally. So it's
it's-
kind of a weird
It's space.
compliment.
All you need is a blaster. See,
Yeah.
I don't even know who Felicity Jones is, so I have no preconceived notion of who she is.
She's amazing. She
You
was
guys have
in
you-
that movie, Theory of Everything. She's in
Yeah,
other
she's-
things that were better, but she was
Did
in
you guys
that.
ever watch? When I was little. I watched on HBO. They had this show called The Worst Witch.
No.
No,
I remember it. I didn't watch it.
it was 94, I want to say, and it was.
She was
it was amazing.
She was a shitty witch.
She was she was the bratty witch at school that no one could get to do the actual witchery things correctly.
Wow. I bet that's on YouTube somewhere.
I'm sure it is. I think Tim Curry was in it too.
Huh.
That sounds awesome.
It's kind of cool.
My only
Totally.
thing with the trailer is there's all stories all over the place on all the movie sites of all this speculation about how Felicity Jones in that movie is going to end up being Ray's mom. Did I miss something in that trailer that's alluded to that?
No, I mean,
I just think that's people grasping at straws.
I think people are just
That's what I
obsessed to find out who her mom is, like when in all actuality, it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. It'll be somebody that's Forcey.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that
Now,
guy's...
is Darth
I just wanted to
Vader
make sure I
gonna be
didn't
in the
miss
movie?
something.
Yeah, that's my question is, does Darth Vader show up? That's the only thing I want to know. I mean, I think it'd be cool if he even just shows up, like, in the background of scenes. Like, that would be kind of awesome in a weird
That'd
way.
be amazing.
I maintain, too, especially after seeing this and seeing, like, what you can do with that universe and a side story. And people look at me like crazy when I see this, but I think that J.J. Abrams and this crew are going to be the people to redeem the prequel universe. Because if you look at something like Clone Wars or like Rebels, there are so many fucking great stories in that prequel universe you can tell. So imagine like a good filmmaker going back and working with that universe and doing things right, like more Star Warsy, but using the kind of, because that's what the Clone Wars has kind of taught me, that like, it's not that there's no value in that universe. It's just that it wasn't used right, because Clone Wars tells all these amazing stories. So I think that would be awesome. And I guess maybe the like adventures of Obi-Wan, theoretical prequel, like could be a good way to and like bring Ethan Hawke back, or Ethan Hawke, Jesus Christ, I'm sorry. Ewan McGregor. I'm sorry, Ewan McGregor, if you're listening to this, that I called you Ethan Hawke.
But there's a lot of roles out there in the Star Wars universe. We probably could squeeze Ethan Hawke in.
Sure. And like, why not? Let's bring the LaBouffe back. Come on, LaBouffe needs roles, right?
LaBouffe.
But I also felt like from watching the trailer for Rogue One, I was really excited because the cinematography looks so much like classic Star Wars.
Sure.
I feel like that goes back to what you're saying, Eric, about you have to be able to tell the story the right way. And I feel like that was a huge issue.
Well, so much of it too is like honoring the dumb 70s future tech, and that's what the prequels didn't do. And under the pretense of like, oh, it's this old universe, but it was really just Lucas having shiny toys and being like, this is how I would have done this if I knew better. But like, that's not what Star Wars is. Like, Star Wars is the dumb medic droid with like an old timey condenser mic stuck to his face for no other reason than they just like went to a junkyard and found a bunch of shit and glued it together.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. Like, that's what makes it feel like Star Wars. Like, the other thing I was talking about somebody with today was like, this is a sci-fi universe conceived of in a time before like wired networks were a thing that existed. And so the technology makes no sense whatsoever that you'd have like hyperdrives and all this shit, but you can't just like send somebody a space message on your space phone. But again, but that's like what makes the whole thing endearing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was so happy. I was so excited, I should say, when I saw that they've got the old Stormtrooper helmets back.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah,
Which I
mean,
realize they have to, but it's awesome that they actually, the small details there look spot on.
But again, like Stormtrooper outfits, super dumb. No practical sense whatsoever. But you're just like, oh,
But they look
it's
legit.
the Stormtrooper. Yeah. All right, sweet. Anybody drink anything exciting tonight before we go to the show? Sophie, last night you had a beer. What were you drinking last night?
Well, I'm currently drinking alcoholic root beer from Abita Brewery in New Orleans because New Orleans is my favorite.
They make good stuff, that place.
Yeah, they do. So they have a alcoholic root beer now called Bayou Bootlegger, which I guess all things considered feels kind of legit since we're talking about the Purge.
Nice. Nice. We used to do it in high school, but it was just pouring vodka into root beer. It's pretty good. It's not bad. Not gonna lie. All right, guys. It's going to do it for the chit chat. Let's take a quick break and review the Purge Anarchy.
Sometimes I wonder what it would be like for everything inside me that's denied and unknown to be revealed. But I'll never know. I live my life in hiding. My survival depends on it.
Hey, this is Ken Foray. Make sure that you tune in to Bloody Good Horror, the best horror you'll ever find in the United States or internationally, Germany, England, Italy. It's all happening right here in the United States. Bloody Good Horror. Ken Foray and out.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big breaking TV. Fuck the prime time, bitch. Main feature.
Evan, you all right over there?
I just think the cat.
I'm pretty sure she fell down the stairs during the bumper. She's fine.
Cool.
Oh man.
Awesome.
Sorry.
All right, guys, the Purge Anarchy. I'm just gonna synopsize this here. Purge Anarchy. So there's this thing where people do purging. It's a universe in which civil unrest leads to a group of people coming to power known as the New Founding Fathers. Not very original, but what are you gonna do? And they come to power on this idea that once a year we should have a night called Purge Night, where for like an 8-hour span or whatever it is, I think it was 8. Was it 8 or 12 or something? I don't remember.
12.
But that, their idea is that you should be immune from prosecution for any crime. Let the people get their shit out. Now, the subtext being like, oh, hey, like rich people kill a bunch of poor people. And so like unemployment is lower and there's less civil unrest and all this. So obviously there are a lot of like socio-economic themes running through this, but that was the idea of the first film. The first film we hang out with actual Ethan Hawke, right? And his family, who he's like a purge security salesman who sells like fancy systems to all his neighbors. And that's kind of a heavy theme in the first film, that the rich people are okay because they can afford like security systems. So this film, we follow 3 different stories and people that you could kind of say are like in like lower socioeconomic rungs. We're in the city now. We're not out in the suburbs where apparently it just gets like shit pops off on Purge Night. And eventually these 3 unrelated stories all intertwine once Purge Night has commenced. You've got a young couple who like just decided to go out and get some milk or something before the purge, and they get stuck out. They're on the run. They've got some kind of personal drama going on. You've got a dude who is like after some type of revenge, that he's basically using the purge as an excuse to go try to chase down. You don't really know what until later in the film. And then we follow a mother and daughter who the daughter's like maybe college age, maybe high school age. The mother works as a waitress. They're both trying to support the grandfather who's kind of sick and dying and stuff. So all 3 of these people end up out in the purge, and then they end up kind of crossing paths. And then there's also an undercurrent in this one of like civil disobedience, or not civil, I guess, just like straight up like underground resistance to the idea of the purge, very much based on like this socioeconomic kind of racial class stuff. And so that kind of comes to a head in the film at some point too. But overall, it's like much larger scale. It's the kind of what we talked about wanting to see from the first film, which is like the scope of the purge. What does the purge really mean when you see it in action? And this film did like really well last year and has led to this sequel coming out, which, like I said, is why we're reviewing it when we are, so we can catch up. And yeah, that's the Purge Anarchy. Evan, you want to tell me what you thought of this bad boy? Why don't you tell me like just kind of briefly what you thought of the first one also?
Yeah, so it's funny. The first one I didn't see until it was out on DVD and Blu-ray because I was kind of late to the party, and I thought it was like okay. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It didn't like offend me. Like sometimes horror movies can be so bad that I just don't know why they made it. But yeah, I thought it was like fun. And then when the second one came out, I went, I think, opening weekend to see it in theaters, and I had such a good time with it. And so I was intrigued to watch it again. To do the show, and so watching it this time, I had the same experience, if not better, just because, it's not a perfect movie by any means, but there's just a lot of things in it that I really like, and kind of like what you said in the synopsis, it definitely does the things I wanted the first one to do, where we get to see what it's like to be outside on the Purge Night, to be in a city, be in a more populated area that isn't just all affluent, homes and a community like that. And I think that everything about it works really well. I think, I know Mark's not here to say this, but one of my favorite things that he said over email when we talked about it was like, I think it was him, about how there's like kind of like boss fights set up kind of throughout the movie. And I thought that's like a perfect way to describe how the movie is set up. They move from like one event to the next, and there's just kind of these random like hardcore like Gatling gun dude and then like crazy woman on the roof. Like there's just all this cool like boss stuff. So I really enjoyed the movie overall.
They're kind of like random encounters in an RPG. Like, oh, I was walking
Yeah.
through the woods and then these monsters jumped out.
Right, totally.
Casey, what'd you think? And give me your little Purge 1 thoughts also.
So I was kind of lukewarm on Purge 1. I thought it was an interesting idea. I thought it was kind of stretched out. Wasn't, like a diehard fan or anything like that. So when they first announced Purge Anarchy, I was kind of like, I don't know that I want to watch more of this. I didn't watch it until this past weekend when we were watching it for this show, and I ended up kind of loving this flick. It was a totally different movie than the first movie. And so the way they expanded on all the themes and things like that, they really kind of went over the top. It gave it kind of a campy feel. There's some cool stuff going on, like with the idea of how the rich people are purging without putting themselves in danger, the whole martyring concept, things like that. There's a lot of cool stuff. And Frank Grillo is awesome, I thought.
Who's he? He's main guy?
He's the main guy that's out there on Purge Night. That we don't know why he's out there, but he ends up saving everybody.
I could see him starring in a string of like great 90s B action movies. Like he's that kind of a dude.
He was in Captain America Winter Soldier.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be in the next one too.
Who does he play?
He was like I forgot what his name is. He's like a comic book character, but not a super well-known one. He was a bad guy in Winter Soldier.
Huh.
He like fights, I think Falcon or something, and then he ends up living at the end. So I think he's going to come back as like a bigger character.
Sure, Falcon. I know Falcon.
I think he's also listed as on the cast for Purge 3.
Yes.
Yeah, he's like the lead in that one too.
Yeah, he's in the trailers, so
yeah.
Spoilers.
I feel like the trailer was that one of these characters has become a U.S. senator or something. Is it the younger girl or the mom or something?
I
thought it
that's
was
the weird thing.
Or is it somebody from the original Purge?
No, I don't think she is at all, because that's what's weird, because I thought the same thing. I figured the way they set up the trailers for election year, it made sense that this lady is, she's the one that survived the last movie, but I don't think she's in it at all.
Yeah, why wouldn't you do that? That's silly. Anyway, Sophie, did you go?
Did I? No, I did
Go
not.
ahead. Sorry.
I was like, go where?
Go.
So I feel like I'm kind of in the same boat as everybody else. I saw the first one. I was really excited for the first one. And then I saw it, and I feel like they had a really good idea, and they didn't really take it. I can't tell if they didn't take it as far as I wanted or they took it too far. I think my biggest complaint with the first one is the messaging is so in your face. Kind of like this cup right now.
Right.
It's it was basically like, I think it was an interesting concept, but they do, we talk a lot about showing and telling, and I think the first movie was just so much telling us and then also showing us, and because the storyline and the world was so small, that felt really, really overwhelming and annoying after a while. So I agree. I thought this one was a lot better, bringing it out into the broader world and kind of giving this story more context and a lot more dimensions made the story more interesting, but they also amped up the violence and the camp factor like Casey talked about, which I think made this one exponentially more enjoyable than the first one.
It's basically a B movie, right? Like it's a big budget. I mean, there's a decent amount of scope and action in this, but it has kind of maintained the B movie sensibilities, and so that makes it feel crazy sometimes, at certain points.
Yeah. So I liked it. I don't know what you guys are talking about with the trailer because I haven't seen the trailer for election year.
Oh, the trailer, it's like way heavier into the political stuff, and basically it's like a woman who's survived the purge, and now she's running for Senate or the Senate or president or some shit on the platform of ending the purge, and so it's all kind of coming to a head. I think it might time jump a little bit too, it sounded like.
Yeah, the kind of like lead guy in this one is like her bodyguard, it looks like, in that movie.
And I sorry.
No, keep going.
Yeah. So it's funny. Sometimes over time I kind of forget exactly what I thought of movies, but like I remember liking The Purge maybe more than like other people on the show. I think it's kind of fascinating. The original Purge is like a small movie, like Sophie was saying. And so what that forces them to do is to do all this world building just through like exposition and stuff you see on the news, and and I actually like really dug that. But I did have the same thought as everybody else coming out of it, that like it feels like a prequel to the movie that I really want to see, which is show me what the fucking Purge is all about. You know what I mean? And it's really, I think, like we have to stop and take a moment to appreciate the fact that we saw a movie. We all went, oh, it was all right, but what if we did this? That'd be amazing. And then they went, fuck it, let's do that. And then they just did it, and it became a huge hit. Like, that's kind of a cool story. I think this is an incredibly tense movie, like from beginning to end. The direction is just spot on. It's exactly the kind of way this thing should be handled. You know, I think they've got a lot of unknown actors. I'm not gonna lie, like some of the supporting characters I thought were like a little weak at times and a little kind of distracting. But overall, it's just it's like this intense, scary, like gleeful B movie thing. And my favorite moment in the movie, and I were joking about this over email, but like you're talking about a kind of a video game open world, right? Like, you know how in janky open world games, random shit happens all the time? Like suddenly just a bear will run out of nowhere and like attack somebody. Like there's this random scene in this movie where something else really intense is happening, and then all of a sudden in slow-mo in the background, a flaming bus goes through the frame, like 50 yards back, no context. I don't even think you heard the noise or explosion. You just see, well, like you hear the flames as it goes by. And nobody even stops to look because it's like the least craziest thing happening. You know, it made me laugh out loud. It's just a lot of fun. And I think that, like, I also like that I want to get into just kind of what these movies are saying, right? Because they're kind of quintessentially American. You know, you can argue that I mean, obviously they're not like the most nuanced things, but I don't think they're designed to be. I think that it's like a very boorish idea, which is reflective of like a boorish society. Like I could see a foreign person watching this movie and being like, oh yeah, that's just what I thought America was like all the time. You know what I mean? Like it's almost, that's part of it, is it's so on the nose that you're just like, oh, come on. But there's something to that I really enjoy, of just the, like I said, like gleeful, just taking the concept and running with it. You know, if I have a complaint, it's that they pull at the thinnest thread in this universe, and the whole thing comes apart.
Sure.
And problem number one is the idea that anybody would leave their house for like a week before the purge happened, just on the off chance that you could get, like in this movie, pretty white couple gets like there's this moment that I really liked where there's guys hanging out before the purge, but they're already masked up and like scaring people, and they incognito cut their brake line while the couple's in like doing, who knows, like getting milk, I don't know, and then they get stranded and they can't leave the city. But it's like they had 45 minutes to get home. Would you seriously leave the house at all? Like people are just working like it's no big deal. And so that stuff's silly, but I think that you just kind of have to go with it. It's one of those movies, like you kind of have to just be like, okay, this is Purge World. I'm just going to accept this as a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think along with that, earlier in that scene, like you said, I think there are a lot of things that if you just pull on the smallest thread, even, we talked about this over email, even if you accept that the purge exists and society is okay with that and that all functions, there are so many other things in this movie that are so flimsy. And earlier in that scene, one of my favorite parts, I think, of this whole movie, because it was so ridiculous, is when that couple is introduced and they're driving, and you can tell that there's some tension in the car, but we don't know how they're related to one another and what the tension is about. He's just scanning through pictures of them on an iPhone, looking really sad. And then she goes, "What are you looking at?" And he's like, "Nothing." Yeah. That's how we're going to introduce what's happening with, and then they get in an argument about whether they should get a divorce or not. And it's just one of the most like ridiculous and ham-fisted, but so like silly things I've ever seen. It just made me laugh so hard.
And in reality, the conversation should be everyone fucking screaming because the purge is about to happen.
Right.
Like, oh my God, it's the purge. We gotta get
home. I think.
But when you think of that, go ahead, Evan.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say, like, kind of Eric, what you were saying a little bit ago. I think that horror films, especially, they can usually go like one of two ways when they're doing something about, I don't know, like a political or social issue, where they can be a little more nuanced or like subtle. Like think of something like It Follows or something where it's like talking about sexuality and how that's done in society. Like that's a very subtle and kind of symbolic movie. And so we're easier to kind of be like, wow, how amazing. Like there's so many amazing things. Whereas this movie is doing something similar, but it's just kind of in your face. Like
it's unapologetically like beating you over the head with it.
And the thing about that though is that that could typically annoy, and I could see why it wouldn't be as good. But for some reason, watching these movies, like you kind of go in knowing like this is what you're gonna get, and the fun of it, for me at least, was just kind of being able to sit there and go, okay, this is crazy. Like you could, like you said, you could pull a string and everything would fall apart. But like the idea that there's a night where people can just kill each other is insane. And like, I don't usually get scared of movies or tense. It's kind of hard, but this movie, especially like you said,
Yeah.
really got me there because like
Totally.
just like the setting up, like you guys said, the guys have the masks already on and they're like ready to go. It's like people are pretty crazy and will do crazy things, and if they're allowed to do that, like that's terrifying. And to know that there's a night where that can happen is like that freaks me out. You know.
Yeah.
I can see that because normally you see somebody that's posing like that with their mask on and trying, you look like they obviously look like they're getting ready to get scary. You usually doesn't phase you because somebody's going to stop it.
Right.
But for that, they're not.
Yeah. And not only not stop it, but encourage it.
Yeah.
And the mask thing too is so genius. I remember talking about it when we discussed the first film, but putting a mask on everybody just turns everyone into a slasher villain. And so like that makes it a horror film, you know what I mean? Because
and that added to a nice little twist kind of too with that group later on.
Mm-hmm.
Twist? I can't remember. Maybe we should.
Because once they get the hold of the people in the truck and they announce that they're not actually out purging.
Right. Yeah.
So, but going back to what Sophie was saying earlier, I think she was spot on, like how they introduced this problem with this couple and everything. And it's very flimsy. It's very light, but the whole movie's kind of like this. And when you compare this to the first Purge, they really beat us over the head about the whole class thing and setting up Ethan Hawke, and how he was making money off of this. And that's how he made his fortune. And that made him kind of a douchebag too. And all this stuff. They really, really beat you over the head with this. So this one, it felt like they stepped back from all that heaviness, because even the classism stuff that was in this movie, except for like the third act, the stuff they showed before that was brief and fairly over the top when they did show it to you, like with the martyr thing and the family and stuff like that. So it's like, boom, yeah, crazy class stuff, and then they move on. So they didn't dwell on that stuff, and they concentrated more on the violence and the action, which made it a lot more enjoyable.
So what's interesting to me is like, I think you could easily look at this film and see a lot of the same class stuff that's in the first film. But the more I think about it, the more I think that it actually is kind of equal opportunity with that stuff, because even though we spend the movie with protagonists who are more like normal everyday people, like some of them you might say are like lower economic class or whatever, you see in this film that everyone purges, right?
Mm-hmm.
From like the scumbag who lives in her building to a bunch of just dudes, who are doing it for money. So yeah, like you see the old people like the rich people gathering people up and like hunting them. But you also see a bunch of assholes in the streets who are just the same class, race, whatever, as the people they're chasing. And so to me, like, it's weird. Like, I think that the class stuff is still there, but in a weird way, I feel like this film is more talking about how the purge is like, it's more of an indictment of like just human nature in general, right? Because the moral that I come away from this movie with is like everyone purges. It's just that based on who you are and with the resources available to you, you purge in a different way. Like maybe you're just the skeevy guy down the hall who like wants to get with your neighbor and just gonna do whatever you want on purge night, or maybe you're the rich person who is just has oppressed anger that you want to get out by like murdering some dude. You know what I mean? But it almost makes it scarier.
I would posit that I think part of what makes this one to kind of blend what you and Casey are saying, I would argue that maybe part of the at least for me, part of the difference was that in the first movie, we were being asked to identify with and sympathize with people who are profiting on the purge and are like actively trying to basically throw this guy out to get him to just allow him to be brutally murdered just because, he's poor and black.
Totally.
I mean, that's not why, but that, they are really indelicate about the message, and it's kind of like, okay, these are like rich white people and they make money off the purge, and this guy's poor and black and homeless, and like they don't really feel bad about like trying to just get rid of him.
Right.
And in this movie, we're being asked to sympathize with people who not only most of them were not planning on purging, but seem much more stressed out about their safety because their safety is so much more tenuous than it was for the first family. And so I think even though the message, I think all the class stuff is just as blatant in both movies, but this time we're being asked to sympathize with people who, and you have the whole element that we haven't really talked about, that there's this guy who's been making these videos about like uprising and anarchy and going against the Purge, and we're being asked to identify with that instead of the people that are profiting off of this.
Mr. Chalky White from Boardwalk Empire.
I would argue though, like
This movie could have used more of that guy, though. I will say that.
I don't disagree. I think the only thing I'll say is that the way that you look at the movie, I think, depends on how you read it. So, like the first one, I think the first time I watched it, I had the same thought where I was like, oh, this is like hard because I don't identify with any of these people. But like then watching it again, I was like, well, I mean, you're kind of put into a situation where these people think it's okay to purge. And then they're put into the situation where it's like now the purge is actually going to affect them.
You talking about the first film?
The first one, yeah.
So then you have like at the end, Lena Headey's character is like, no one's going to die right now. We're done. I'm not doing this anymore. And I think that was the kind of the theme of the movie was like, now that it's affected them, they understand that it's bad.
Yeah.
And I think this one does that too, because we have Frank Grillo's character is going out to get revenge using his like lawful right to do so. But by the end of the movie, we see that he makes the, you know, humanistic, you know, emotional choice as opposed to just doing like, you know, the lawful, you know, get revenge kind of situation. And I mean, call me crazy. And I don't know, I feel like this isn't that crazy of an idea just because if you look at the political climate right now, like, I mean, look at gun laws. People like are so adamant, like, I need to have my gun. And it's like, not to bash anybody that wants to do that, but like I feel like the way that the movie does it, where there's people always yelling about it's my right to purge, it's my right to do this. I feel like it's kind of echoing that a little bit, and it's
all you have to do is look at comments from like when somebody gets shot by a cop that like did some minor thing, and then all the comments are like he shouldn't have been doing that thing, or he wouldn't be dead, and you're like, whoa, dude. Yeah. But that's like people. I think that these movies are so over the top that people like to just kind of write them off as dumb little movies, and they're totally B movies, but there's something about this concept that is just like ripped straight from America's psyche, and that's what makes it kind of so terrifying but also fascinating. And like I know Schnars likes to make this point that when you look back at different cinematic periods throughout history, sometimes the B movies tell you more about the mood of the country than the popular movies. Like something as simple as the nuclear scare, like sci-fi films of the 50s. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And if you know, like you look at 80s and it's always like all those exploitation films are always about just like crime and murder and, you know, and so I think it's a mistake to dismiss these films as kind of like dumb little movies. And even if like, it's fine that the commentary is heavy-handed and you don't even necessarily have to agree with it, but it still is really, to me, tapping into something that, that especially with like this election going on, I feel like all of these things that are just kind of bubbling under the surface of American culture. And here's an example, like what would happen if just like the worst case scenario just came true. And it's just so, that's to me, like, they're just fascinating films. And I'm like,
that's why I'm so excited to see the third one now.
I mean, holy shit. What, I mean, I guess you know when elections are going to be so you can plan ahead, but it's pretty,
I wish they had done that. Like, I wish it was coming out now and not.
It's pretty prescient. But like, it's coming out the 4th of July, which is even better. You know what I mean?
So I can do a double feature of that and Independence Day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, totally. No, and Eric, I totally agree. Like with what you said about John bringing that up. Like it just like that's why. Like honestly, Halloween is one of my favorite movies, and I know Sophie, and I'm sure most of us are all in the same boat. But like that movie is such like a B slasher in so many ways. But like the commentary about like post Vietnam is crazy good. You know, like it's so smart and does not get as much credit in that sense as, you know, for like normies or whatever. They might just see it as a slasher movie, but I think we can all like step back and kind of go, but there's a lot of stuff said here that's really important. And I think these movies, like you said, are very much in that same vein.
You know, I think that Last House on the Left is another one that I think has there's a lot of interesting subtext there with kind of the sort of down downfall of like hippie culture and stuff like that. I wrote an article about it on the site actually a while ago, but another movie that's basically just like a kind of disgusting, trashy piece of cinema. I mean that in the best way possible, obviously, but has all this really fascinating cultural stuff when you kind of look back in hindsight. But these are just. But on the same hand, they are still just kind of. This is a dumb, fun kind of B movie. Very intense. Any other scenes you guys wanted to discuss? Kind of angles that you liked, Casey?
I thought what it was a very pivotal scene, and it goes back to when you guys were talking about there's moments in this movie that that make you sympathize some with the purging people, is when they're at the rich people hunt later on, and it's after Liz's husband gets shot up and things like that, and there's a key moment there when Frank Grillo grabs her by the arm and says, "Come on, we need to go," and she says, "I want to purge," and everybody around her, even Frank's like, "Okay, we understand," and you as a viewer are doing the same thing. It's like, yeah, I get it. They treated you like shit. Go for it.
Yeah, they kind of just disappear after that too, right? They don't come back after
Yeah.
that.
Right.
They do, but you know what's going to happen. There's no, mystery to it or anything like that. But that's one of those moments where they all of a sudden turn you, the viewer, into sympathizing with these people that are out there purging on this night.
These old people like really didn't think out their whole plan for this like little hunting ground, because all it took was one dude with any survival skills to just fuck everybody up. Just everyone's dead in like 30 seconds.
Right.
And that's a big risk when you're getting all of your victims just at random off the street.
Kind of reminded
Because
me.
people who are outside you would think would be savvy enough to get the weapons from, like you would assume they would be out there trying to purge anyway.
Yeah.
You're also like really relying on. I mean, so the interesting thing is that these rich people have squads that are going around rounding up people for them, and they're literally in some cases, and it's a great contrast to the first film where we see, Ethan Hawke's family is safe with all these barriers and stuff. These people have these kind of just makeshift things on their doors, and they're just not doing it. You know what I mean? To the point where these crews can go in and bust their door down and take them out. Because otherwise, like if you're just going out randomly to purge, you're really like assuming that a whole bunch of people are just going to get stuck out, which again, I find like insane. You'd think there'd be like shelters and, stuff like that, but.
Yeah, because they showed that briefly when we first saw the Gatling gun guy. There was a couple walking down the street with their AKs, and they're just all nonchalantly strolling down the street like they got nothing to worry about. It's like, come on, people.
You're not the only ones out.
Although, I mean, like maybe there's part of it that's the point in a way, where that's how normal it is in this society, that like people don't really freak out that much about it. Like even the party that they end up at like 3/4 way through the film or halfway through the movie, literally dude's got like multiple people have gun wounds, and they're just drinking their wine, and they're like, wow, that's crazy, you got purged. But they're just kind of going about their way. That scene ends amazingly, by the way. But again, it's like there is a certain level of chill in the society towards this thing until you're caught in it yourself,
I think it's interesting too. I mean, kind of going back to how I kind of bought a lot of it, but looking at it again, that whole thing where they round up people from the street and stuff like that. I mean, do you guys remember like in the news, I think it wasn't that long ago, maybe 6 months ago, when that rich dude like killed that lion, and like,
yes.
Yeah, like that makes so much sense to me, and I thought that was a really interesting writing choice to have, like, because people are so rich and they feel like they have the right to purge, and I feel like that goes back into our society now, is like, we should make a game out of it because we're bored of like the typical, and we don't have to walk the streets because we're better than everyone else.
It's like their safe version of it. Like they do everything they can with their resources to make it as least dangerous for them as possible.
Right, and like the fact that you would like Sophie said, you would be like, why would you round up the people that are like clearly still alive after like 8 hours out on the streets? I mean, it's similar. Like they go and kill like these beasts, these lions out in the jungle, and you'd think like that would be a weird thing to do, but it makes sense in this setting. The only part of that scene, Yeah, like it kind of worked for me, but the only part that was like hard for me, I'll be honest, was that like old blonde woman that was like doing the emceeing of the night.
She was the worst.
She was the
Evan, I
worst.
thought you'd
Especially,
love her.
I like love her for the fact that she's terrible, but like the fact that she was like that one part where she's talking to those twin ladies and she's like, "I'm sure you brought your signature blades." I was like, "Oh my god, I can't! I need to leave right
She's
now."
like, my favorite weapon is the blah blah blah. It just is exquisite.
Yeah, that was a lot. Like
The way
that
that
was.
she talked about that gun made me very uncomfortable.
So that's a great contrast, though, right? Like when the street purgers kill people, it's like this very personal, savage, like one-on-one thing, right? They're like up in their grills. It's like they're chasing them down. But the rich people, their like controlled hunt is it's very dehumanizing in a way. Whereas like
They even put on hunting clothes.
what's going on in the streets is more of this like primal, like human thing. Like, I'm gonna look you in the eye and fucking gun you down. Whereas this rich thing where they even kind of trot them out on stage in front of everybody so they can bid on who's gonna do it, and it's like so dehumanizing. On top of the fact that they're just killing them, it's also like they're just cattle basically at some point.
Well, that was great though, because they all left to go change and put on their fancy hunting clothes, and it's like they're gonna go run the foxes or whatever.
And like a regular rich asshole that hunts, right? Like they have all the advantages. They've got the fucking night vision, and they've got all the weapons, and
well, it's like people who like pay to like buy a lion and have it put on like a certain set of ground and have it like tranked. And but while we're on this topic, because talking about scenes that stood out, we talked about this over email, but haven't, and we've alluded to it in the podcast. But the scene where the grandfather just basically what happens is he makes arrangements with a wealthy white family that he will allow himself to be their sacrifice for the purge, and that they'll pay his family an exorbitant amount of money. And I found that scene to be like for a movie that I think is pretty heavy-handed, and I agree with what you guys are saying. I think that the message is really interesting, and I think they're doing a lot of interesting things. For a movie that was very heavy-handed, that sequence was very, very emotional in a way that I was not expecting it to be at all.
I found it kind of shocking myself, and that's where I thought they were going over the top. But there's something about the scene.
There's
they
a lot
did
of
it geniusly.
plastic.
Yeah, they
Like
laid
it's
out plastic.
slaughterhouse.
They're standing like a half circle around them when they all pull their machetes out and they pull back and they're all wearing their nice dresses and everything. It's like, oh shit.
And the 11-year-old and everyone starts like prison style shivving him basically.
And that was, I mean, honestly, that was another thing where it feels like, yeah, you look at that and you're like, that's ridiculous. That would never happen now. And then you just like read the news, and
it was super brutal too, because like you see some stuff with him happen before. So like he puts on a suit and he goes outside and there's like a fancy car waiting to pick him up. So then later when you find out what happened, like a few scenes later, I got this skeevy feeling of like, oh man, they sent like a driver to go pick him up.
Yeah.
That's so gross for some reason.
And this is
somehow that made it worse to
for
me.
Weeks.
Yeah, this goes. I mean, this like Sophie, like you said, like this scene is actually kind of brilliant, like because like this goes back to like kind of the rituals of the nuclear family in a lot of ways, and I would even say like going back to the whole political. There's a lot of religion in that too, just because I think that I don't want to get super political, and I'm sorry if I offend anyone, but I think that a lot of the gun law things like that kind of tie back to a certain type of person, typically the people that kind of follow a certain religion. And I think that this is a great representation of that, where you kind of have this family in a semicircle, very dressed well. It's kind of like praying over a meal. I mean, it's kind of similar in that way.
It was like a holiday meal because they even had a meal.
Yeah, it's like Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of like them gathering together, like, oh, this is our right, like, praise God, we have this lawful right to do this thing, and they don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, there's a lot of great context there, and I think that, like you said, that it's really interesting how emotional it is.
Right, it's become like an accepted ritual, right? Like literally they've turned it into like a family ritual that is to be like cherished, and also there's a lot of talk of it being your duty as a citizen to purge. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think going back to what Evan said, I did find it interesting, and I don't maybe this happened in the first one too, and I just don't remember it as much, but I thought that there was a lot of interesting commentary about religion and politics being completely enmeshed in this movie. And like there were several groups that said that same prayer, and the prayer was like putting God and the new founding fathers like on this same level.
Well, that
And I thought that
comes
was a
up.
really interesting commentary.
You said you hadn't seen the trailer for Election Day yet, right, Sophie?
Right.
That's actually a prominent part of that trailer where that comes to a head. So,
There's a movie guide for this movie.
oh boy.
Get on it.
Anything else you guys want to talk about? Any other criticisms or?
My only problem that I found glaring that disturbed me a little bit was at the beginning. We talked about it with this young couple as they got in the car to go pick up milk or whatever. They talked like they had like a mission to be out there and they were going somewhere. We never find out really exactly what it was, so that
I
seems
thought
kind
they
of
were going to
superfluous.
his sister's house. Because she kept
Was that
saying,
what
we
it
have
is? I
to
may have
tell your
missed it.
sister. I thought that
Yeah.
my assumption was they were going to spend the purge with their family.
Okay, so I got you. That makes more sense then, because I
think,
must have missed
but I
that.
don't- But I mean, but they aren't super clear about it. That's just kind of like a throwaway line that happens. That's just
Yeah.
the assumption I made.
But I was going to say though, as the movie rolls along, it becomes apparent that kind of detail's not really important. So it's pretty easy to gloss over.
Purging. This movie has this super sick poster too. I don't know if you guys remember this, but we have it up in the video right now. But it's like an American flag made out of icons of guns.
Yeah, legit.
Oh man, whoever came up with that, you sir are a genius.
Can I just say how crazy it is that on a night when all crime is legal, the only crime people want to do is raping and murdering. Like there doesn't seem to be any real property damage or like theft.
Yeah, no one's like shitting in the streets or like
Right.
keying their neighbor's car.
Well, I mean, okay, if you're gonna go out and like that's what people are gonna do, then like wasting your time by like looting a store is probably dumb.
Well,
I mean,
but
I
not
think
only
it's just
that,
like
but-
anything. Like if you were given like you can take anything in the store, you would take the most expensive thing, not like the cheapy
Right,
thing.
but
So that's
also
why
you're-
murder is like the
But I
priority.
feel like if you told me that I could go out and I could rob a store or I could kill someone, I would be like, okay, I'm gonna go steal a pair of shoes.
right, but
I
you're
don't know.
But
also
you're going
like
to be weighed
risk.
down.
You're
and
risk.
You're going to be easy target.
You risk
Gonna go
dying.
get like
though.
a.
Like you could die. That's the problem.
That's-
is
that's
that
what I mean.
Yeah,
You
I
have
guess
to
that's
be
fair. Is
willing.
the people who would do prop. Yeah, but
Yeah.
but if you were already out there to kill people, why wouldn't you also just smash a bunch of shit?
I might just like sneak out of my house and go shit on my neighbor's doorstep and then run back. I don't know.
I'm just saying that like people destroy cities when sports teams win, and then the purge happens, and like
True.
LA looks fine except that there's bodies everywhere.
Well, I mean,
There's
like that's
bodies.
only. I mean, we don't only see as much damage as is there. We don't know if like obviously no one like levels a building, but like we see that bus, like Eric said, like go by.
Yeah,
so like,
that's-
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I don't personally want a bunch of scenes of people like graffitiing a wall. I just
Well,
be like,
sure.
What else
And
would you
like,
do in the
I think we
purge?
acknowledge that like if you pull a single string in this would fall apart. So this is by
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
no means me
Yeah.
saying that like this movie is less fun for that reason, but it just like it feels like as the night goes on, the city should look more dystopian. It just kind of like looks the same except there are bodies everywhere.
It brings
See, but
up.
they were, because I'd be the guy that walked out and say, "Hey, I finally got this 70-inch TV that I wanted." Then I'd hear those bottles from the Warriors in the background, chink chink, chink chink.
yeah, and you're like, oh no.
It brings up a great question though, of like a great thought exercise of like if not murdering and raping, what would you do in the purge? I don't know.
Is that what you want all of us to answer right
No,
now?
I'm
That feels
just
like
break
really
shit.
too
That's
real.
why I said thought exercise because maybe we don't have to answer it right
Keep
now.
it
That actually, you have time to think on it because I'm pretty sure that comes up in Ask BGH in a little bit.
Oh.
Probably just whatever a random night when I was like 17 and at a party ended up looking like at like 3 a.m.
Passed
All right,
out at the
guys.
truck stop.
Like the sad truth is that if the purge was real, I would just get drunk and hide under my bed.
We have a magical movie guide for this that I'm going to read. And let me tell you, I read the first sentence and it's a doozy. But first, let's do recommendations. Evan, would you recommend somebody see this?
Yes.
Casey?
Most definitely.
Sophie?
Yes.
Cool. I'm going to say yes too. And normally we'd say whether or not we thought it was like theater worthy, but it does not really relevant this time since it's not in theaters anymore. But
I mean, definitely rent a theater and go watch it.
yes.
Yes.
Well, actually, you could watch it in VR now in that thing you can do on your phone where it looks like a movie theater. I would do that.
Or you could wait till Purge night and break into a theater and play it.
Yeah.
That's what Casey would do with this purge.
Yes.
This first sentence, wow, it's a lot of stuff going on. So, the Purge Anarchy, as Mark will often tell you, Movie Guide is a site, a religious site that rates movies based on their moral content for viewers. Viewers like Evan with sensitive souls who, just can't get too dark. So first up, very strong, romantic, anti-American, anti-capitalist, leftist, rather racist worldview where the villains all seem to be white government leaders and rich white people who murder mostly poor people for kicks and profit, with a mockery of American values and patriotism, including public and perhaps even conservative, appeals to God and country and evil people refer to God, which, again, this is all one run-on sentence, so I'm doing my best here, which seems to create a false religion attacking belief in God in a backhanded sort of way, plus some Christian moral redemptive values and implied references such as forgiveness overcomes revenge at the end and protecting the weak and sacrifice are extolled, about 91 obscenities, 4 strong profanities, 10 light profanities, very strong violence with blood, and some blood spurts include many shooting murders, including many at point blank. Man guns down people while firing heavy-duty machine gun, people shot in chest multiple times and usually die, fighting, couple people strangled, man on fire from flamethrower, no depicted sex scenes, but wife attacks husband for apparently cheating on her with her sister.
Spoiler alert.
And one man licks woman's face and threatens raping her and her daughter at gunpoint, but he's shot dead before anything else happens. No nudity, alcohol use, no smoking, but woman takes pills with alcohol, and strong miscellaneous immorality. That's my new favorite thing.
Like it's a grab bag.
Miscellaneous immorality. Includes revenge, but government corruption, murder for hire, kidnapping, home invasion, a theme throughout the movie that violence can purge one's soul and psychological character. Government authorizes murder and mayhem, deceit, people held captive, and some people do bad things to survive.
Wow.
Can I ask a question about the guns?
My throat hurts after reading that.
The people that were, spoiler alert, if you've made it this far and you are not expecting spoilers, the people that were working for the government, the guns that they had made a weird like electronic buzzing sound.
I mean,
is that a future thing or do guns do that?
I thought that was just the Gatling gun sound because those do make
even
like
the
a
guys
whirring
that
sound.
were gunning down the doors had that.
I don't know.
Oh.
Not sure.
Okay.
Guns. You know who doesn't know anything about guns, Sophie? Anybody on this podcast. Everything I know about guns I learned from video games, which is actually a surprising amount, but still.
Did I tell you guys that a podcast I listened to was they had like a movie that was sponsoring them, so they advertised for the movie, and it was that movie Son of God, and I was like, that's weird that this podcast would be sponsored by it. And they read a quote recommending the movie, and then quoted the guy who writes for MovieGuide.org.
Wow.
Apparently he has a doctorate, but I think he made it up.
Wow. Yeah, the only thing I know about guns is like playing Resident Evil and combining but I like to load a gun. All I know is like how to combine a box of bullets with the gun itself and being like, good, I have enough.
If I smush these two plants together, it becomes spray.
Yeah, it make an herb. Right?
I've been playing The Division lately, so I am quite proud of myself that I know what an M1A sniper rifle is.
Nice. I love sniper rifles. The best. All right, guys. That's going to do it for our discussion on the Purge Anarchy. Let's take a quick break so that we can do some fan mail.
This audience is watching what the film critic for After Dark magazine has called the most terrifying movie I have ever seen.
Leave me alone! Jill, we traced the call. It's coming from inside the house. Just get out of that house.
Every babysitter's nightmare becomes real when a stranger calls.
Hello, creeps.
It's John Kassir,
the voice of the Crypt Keeper. And I'm a friend of BloodyGoodHorror.com.
Send your emails to info@bloodygoodhorror.com or hit us up on Twitter at BGHorror with the hashtag AskBGH. And don't forget to pick up back episodes of the show at podcast.bloodygoodhorror.com.
And we are back. Back to do fan mail.
Hey, Eric, before you get into fan mail, can I make a bumper music request?
Sure.
Can you start adding in Space Pants?
I don't know what that is.
You didn't watch SNL this week with Peter Dinklage yet?
No, I did not.
You need to get on that.
You can't.
And then you'll understand what I'm talking about.
Listen, if I put SNL music in the show, it will get yanked off of YouTube in like 4 seconds.
Okay, well, that's my own joke. I thought it was hilarious.
I loved it.
I had a video game stream up that got flagged because the person who did the music for the level had like an aggressive copyright thing up for their song.
Whoa.
So just playing it set it off. No, I don't. I can't stay up late enough for SNL anymore, and I don't have a DVR, so I'll just watch whatever they put on YouTube the next day. But I missed this week so far.
You can watch it on the Hulus.
Yeah, I don't like Hulu. Hulu annoys me. Too many commercials.
I will send you a link because I think you would enjoy it.
Hey Evan.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about Batman versus Superman?
Oh. I thought it's terrible script.
Yeah, I mean the dialogue in particular was like a little.
Oh, I just mean the narrative. Like,
yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, everybody's motivations don't make any sense.
I enjoyed it.
I'm glad, and that's what.
Listen,
God,
I also like.
whatever.
If you listened to last week's show, which obviously you didn't, Evan. I like really don't. I have no investment in Superman whatsoever, and I loved like the Dark Knight trilogy, but I have no investment in Batfleck. So I just kind of went in thinking whatever, and I'm also contrarian. So after hearing all the bad reviews, I was like, I want to like this movie. It's dumb, but I enjoyed it
a lot with like I went in and it wasn't as bad as I thought, and I can't do it. Like,
listen, Evan, I'm about to have a kid. Okay, I need to find all the simple joys in life that I can.
You should, and I'm glad. I'm glad. When
but also, I'm like one
it.
of the few people that like. I really like Zack Snyder's take on Superman, and so I like him in the movie. But I realize I'm in the like extreme minority in that camp. So
yeah.
Anyway,
well,
I bring
Eric,
that up.
You'll be happy to know I went and saw it, and I enjoyed it quite a bit.
High five, Casey. I bring that up because Chris Silva here wrote a long email that I'm not going to read because it's way too long, but he agreed with me. So he just says thumbs up, Eric.
Yeah, but you're not going to read it, so you could be lying.
Yeah. I could just say that all the time. Yeah, we got like 10 emails. Everyone said I was right. It was weird.
Why haven't you been making up more emails about people who use RSS feeds?
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, I just got 10 emails that people use RSS feeds.
Next up, Maglo wrote in and said, you guys were wondering about the prices of the Atari 2600 and other old game systems. This site has a list of the original prices and also those adjusted for inflation. So let's see, an Atari, a Nintendo, regular Nintendo costs $412. In inflated prices, the original price was $200. So like by today's standards, it would have been $412. The 3DO cost $1,095 by today's money. That's why we joke that only rich people had them. The Atari original price was $200 in 1977, which equates to $796 in today's dollars.
Wow.
Got that nice wood grain finish.
Ooh.
So awesome. You guys probably too young to mess around with Ataris in your day.
I played with one.
Yeah. It's got the best sounds.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about the sounds that an Atari make that just like get into my reptile brain and just like tap into something from when I was a little kid.
I had the Sears version of the Atari.
What's that?
It was the same thing, but it had Sears logo on it.
It was actually Atari though?
Yeah.
Did it still have the wood grain?
Oh yeah.
Nice. They also made like little cheesy wood grain console things that slid open. You could store all your games in. It's pretty sweet. Atari.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good times.
Next up, Molly Gardner sends a link to, I believe it's this beer. I don't know if we talked about this, but a few weeks ago, the show, Joe was talking about a beer that was brewed from the yeast extracted from the brewer's beard.
Yeah.
So like it's this new thing of finding, because yeast like just exists in the wild. And so finding it, cultivating that strain, and then using that for your beer, because that's what they do with yeast, right? It's like they make genetic lines of it and they cultivate it themselves, blah, blah, blah. So this link to this beer called Yoni is...
Thumbs down.
Let's say...
I read about this.
In relation to ladies and making of beer in the same way.
They're making it with lactic acid from women's vaginas.
Yeah. I can't say it, but Sophie can.
What?
Apparently.
And the guy thinks it's super feminist, and it's not.
The guy, oh, is it a guy doing it? Of course.
It's a guy.
Creepy.
Wait.
And he like specifies.
I wouldn't drink the beer either, for the record. Like, that's no thank you.
No, but his whole attitude is like, I'm being super feminist, and it's like really cool, but it's very creepy the way that he talks about the beer. Like, this came from like the vagina of a like 27-year-old redhead, and it's like that's gross.
This is a 47-year-old vintage here.
Yeah. Wait, how does he get it out of the vagina? Like, where did?
I don't know. I didn't do that much research. I just saw his Indiegogo campaign.
Do like women sign up? Like, I want to donate my.
My assumption. I hope to God people are giving it to him and he's not stealing it somehow.
Someone needs to make a GIF of the confused face that Evan just made when he asked that question, because it was incredible. That was a true question.
Doing a swab.
When a man and a woman love each other very much.
Yeah, they make a beer. Wow.
I did read the part that he was bragging about the beers being from 27-year-old redheads and stuff. That's gross, because that's marketing it like they market sex toys and stuff.
Yeah, but he thinks it's really feminist. So
no.
Anyway, it's gross.
Yeah.
And yes, and I agree. Like, why would that?
It's real gross, is what it is. info@bloodygoodhorror.com is email address if you want to send gross stuff like that. We're also on Twitter @BGHorror with the hashtag AskBGH. Casey, hit us up.
All right, we're going to jump up with the first one. We go back in the Wayback Machine to this past weekend, one that came in shortly after we got done recording the last episode, where we were talking about 10 Cloverfield Lane post-show. And we had hear from one @Phillies Femme, who happens to be our own Sophie, who says the city in the beginning of 10 Cloverfield Lane is New Orleans, not a question. Hashtag the more you know.
Not a question, bitch.
I think we got another one of those too. So
yeah, I'm detecting a little sass in that message.
No. I didn't mean for it to be okay. It was a little sassy, but my intention was, if I was going to put Ask BGH on it, it would, and then it was a statement. So I thought I would clarify that I was just letting you guys know.
Not a question. Next.
Let's see. I'm also going to throw in some of the BGH classics here, because I'm not forward thinking enough to separate them. But we also have a BGH classics tweet here from Claire_Quilty. Sigourney Weaver breast milk, episode 78. Joe's first episode in the beginning of the shit he says that you come to cherish.
Oh man, Joe. He's a special, special man.
Yes, he is. He's our special man.
Is it true that his first episode was Dead Girl? Because that's not nice, you guys.
That's what he claims. Yeah, I do not recall that, but.
And here's another BGH classic from @Mary MacDonald. Let's fucking make Saw movies again. Where is my Saw Hostel crossover? Sawstel from Eric.
Nice. Sawstel. I like it. I still think they should be making Saw movies. I don't know, whatever. I make Purge movies now. I'm fine with that. And they should really be coming out. Like, I appreciate the whole, like, 4th of July release thing, but like I need a dumb Halloween series every year. You know what I mean? I don't know what's filling that place right now.
Aren't they rebooting Saw?
Yeah, there's something in the works. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Let's see here. Now we get back to the Ask BGH questions that started rolling in last night. Let's see here. Apologize as I stall by.
Yeah, I apologize to any patrons who tuned in last night and were ready to go, or people looking for their show Thursday. We had some technical difficulties.
Let's see. First Ask BGH from @Jem Givens. Are you guys planning on going to Scare LA this summer?
None of us. Well, Evan's in LA. Are you familiar with this, Evan?
What's Scare LA?
Probably a horror convention. I honestly don't know. We don't have the details there. So.
I mean, if we can get in, then I'll go.
Sure. Find me a website.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
Evan is now officially our LA liaison. So
that's right.
I'm actually going to.
I've been getting dumb invitations to dumb things in LA for years and haven't been able to send anyone to them. And now I'm just going to start sending Evan.
Well, Schnars just gave me an assignment to go review the green room because A24 is doing like a little screening this week. So I'm going on Monday for that.
Cool.
Nice.
So yeah.
All right, our next Ask BGH, Eric, I'm going to direct this one to you because it is right up your alley. This comes from @Wes McDowell. As a fellow podcaster, the show sounds great. How do you record? Through Skype or another program?
Oh man, it's a spider's nest of stuff going on. We record the show through Skype, but we've kind of also gone out of our way for the last couple of years to make sure like everybody's a decent mic. Man, I'm jacked in straight to the internet, which helps a ton because basically what you hear is what's being recorded on my end. So like as long as my call is clean, then the show sounds clean. It's also why you hear me the clearest because I'm not being digitally gone through Skype before it comes to the show. And now things are more complicated now because we wanted people to hear the bumpers live. And so Skype goes out of the computer into a mixing board. My voice and the bumpers go into the mixing board. Then that goes back into the computer. So it's kind of complicated now, but we do use Skype. Honestly, like if you get good mics, people have decent connections, and you make sure that people are microphoning properly, you can get a really decent sound out of Skype.
Yeah.
It's just trial and error. Like, that's all it is.
And we found for experimenting, like on my end, it works best if I shut down everything in the background on my computer and whatnot. It helps improve your connection.
I mean, honestly, right, like you got to make sacrifices. Like, I no lie, make Schnars in the summer when it's like 120 degrees in his New York City apartment, I make him turn his air conditioning off because it's loud. You know what I mean? But these are the sacrifices Schnars has to make.
All right.
If he wants to send in, if he has any questions too, like I'm always happy if people email us in and ask tech questions about the show. Just info@bloodygoodhorror.com. I'm happy to help out any way I can.
Yeah, and I know that's a big question to ask on the Ask BGH, but I know Eric likes to brag about his new setup.
It's a pretty baller. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, this is for about the last 3 weeks, month now. We have like the first legit, real setup in BGH history that's not just like being held together by Scotch tape and stuff. So.
Okay, our next two Ask BGHs, we got one from @Mike Fitzgerald and one from @DieselStroke316 that goes back to the question that I mentioned earlier that was going to come up later. Both of them ask, what crime would you commit if the Purge was real?
This is so weird, but for some reason all I can think about is pooping on things. Like that's something that I can't do normally that apparently I really want to because I just can't get it out of my head. I mean, looting sounds great, but again, like you're gonna die, so like I don't really feel like being outside so much. Wait, are cyber crimes like you could just do?
Whoa,
you could hack shit.
Thing.
Yeah,
all crimes are legal.
What if you had like a drone with a gun on it, so you can be from the safety of your house, but you can fly a drone around and just cap people?
I just now have visions in my head of Eric sitting in a like public flower pot with his little legs with his pants around his ankles,
just perched like a gargoyle.
What are you looking at?
I feel like the Purge would be the best and worst time to go streaking.
Yeah,
because if you died, that'd be super unfortunate for you.
And you can't carry extra ammo.
Fair point.
You could drive in the carpool lane without extra people in the car.
There you go.
We could recreate that mall scene from Blues Brothers.
Just get wild, just go with it. Just hang your dingus out your window and just let it flap in the breeze, like anything you want. I mean, someone might shoot it off. So
I was gonna say then.
Really, just like poopy dingus stuff. That's all I can think of.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then we got the next one is from @Mike A. Fitzgerald as well, and we know everybody's thinking it, so we're going to go ahead and ask it. What odds do you give that a President Trump would enact the Purge?
I feel like he'd be like, oh, I don't know. It seems like a good idea. I got some people with me ideas around me, and we're going to talk about it.
Scary high. I think the odds are scary high.
Yeah, I agree.
And then it would happen, and then he'd disavow ever saying it was okay.
Right. He would say he doesn't condone violence.
I never said that. The press are liars. I never said that. I said the Purge would be sweet, not that everybody should purge. Getting political. All right.
@Bell Lassiter writes in, how does Schnars handle poor people approaching him in parking lots asking for money? # I done got.
Schnars is a lovely man.
Mm-hmm.
He's a man of the people, that John Schnars. To be fair, I don't react very well to people asking me for money either. So
I do have to commend everybody here tonight for not making any schnars being gone purging jokes.
Yeah,
for the episode.
Right.
Oh, I just didn't think of them.
Missed opportunity.
It just happened to align.
Self-control.
It just happened to align with the annual Duke homeless hunt. Complete coincidence.
All right, our next one from @Nick Almond Scott. If purgers captured Joe and John and forced you to kill one, or else both would die, who would you choose?
I would kill myself. I couldn't live in a world without all that beauty.
There you go.
They're basically like two sides of the same person. They're very Jekyll and Hyde.
I feel like there's no answer to that question because it's just like there would be no way that they would be in that situation in the first place.
I think it would be more fun to watch those two arguing it out between each other.
Yeah.
Sure. Joe would immediately kill John.
What?
We've all decided on the show multiple times that in any kind of like purging or like we're stuck on an island scenario, Joe's the one to be afraid of because he would get nasty real quick.
He's the one that's going to push you at the zombies.
Yes,
instead of...
totally.
Joe, I could see Joe eating a person if he had to.
That's gonna be
like I would just run away.
Quote.
I would just run away and leave you alone, and like just like in Cabin Fever, Joe would actively try to get you murdered by whatever the thing was, just to up his own chances.
Okay, @Fishhead 311.
311, nice.
Why does everyone commit murder during the purge? Why not smoke weed in front of a cop?
Because there are no cops, bro. It's the purge.
Yeah.
Go to where they live.
Yeah, you lose. Yeah, just sit. Go to like a cop's house and just sit on the cruiser and just smoke. Just smoke weed and like smoke meth.
And take a shit on his hood.
Yeah. Pull your dingus out. Nothing can happen. It's purge night.
If you steal something on the purge, can they take it away from you the next day? Like if you stole a car, do you just get to keep it?
That's a good question. These are more questions I'd like to be answered by the purge.
Yeah. I don't know. Just have a side story where some guy steals a Maserati and then I want to know what happens.
We got plans to make, so we need to know. Let's see here. We're getting close to the end. I think I have one more. This is exciting radio, I know. Let's see. @Jerbear Gutkin asks, Happy National Beer Day. What's y'all's favorite beers at the moment of all time?
I think we know Sophie's favorite beer.
What are you going to say? Are you going to say the vagina beer, Eric?
No. I was going to go with something Abita.
My favorite beer right now is actually Squall by Dogfish Head. Are any of you familiar? Joe and I were talking about it on Slack.
No.
So Dogfish Head, Delaware Brewery, it's where I'm from. Also, my 10th grade history teacher was the founder's dad. And Squall is an IPA that he brewed, one of the first beers he ever brewed, and he wanted to continually hop a beer. So he basically retrofitted one of those old electric vibrating football tables to vibrate hops like continually into the beer while it was brewing.
Wow.
And he hasn't brewed it. They just released it and bottled it for the first time in 7 years. So I've never had it because I wasn't old enough when it was first made.
That's real weird.
But I've bought several bombers of it since it came out, and it's fantastic.
The last beer I was way into was Old Chub, which is a Scotch ale, and will just ruin your life, man. Oh my God, it's so
For
good.
sure.
Though. It's so good.
Anything Oscar Blues is great.
Yep. There was a bar near me that had it on tap, so I could just go and just get it fresh from the mother's teat. It's really good.
Nice.
I'm more of a wine drinker, Marshall.
Ooh.
But that's not because I'm fancy. It's just because that's what people usually give me. But beer, I'm lame. Like I've only literally had like Blue Moon and Stella.
You've had Dogfish Head. You had Dogfish Head at Horror Hound.
What was the one I drank in the morning? Was that the pumpkin one?
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah.
Called Pumpkin. For that Delaware, Philadelphia accent.
Pumpkin beer on a hangover first thing in the morning is a bold move.
I felt fine that day. This was not the day that I went with Mark. This was the day that we were leaving to go back to Chicago.
Yeah.
That does sound That sounds perfect for a Horror Hound weekend story, though. What was that beer I drank in the morning?
I will say, too, when I was still drinking but had gone gluten-free, Dogfish Head makes a gluten-free beer. I can't remember the name of it. It's kind of got strawberries in it. It is...
Tweezenale.
Yeah, Tweezenale, yeah. And it's like kind of honey-ish. It's really good. You know, as far as like, I can't drink real beer, how about this thing? It's really by far the best one I've ever tasted. I tried a bunch of them.
Cool.
I'm real into local beers lately, and there's one out of Bloomington, Indiana, from a brewery called Quaffon that is the Hoosier Red Ale, which is really awesome. So,
cool.
But unless you're a Hoosier, you probably have zero interest.
We're all Hoosiers in here, Casey.
Right. Anything else on Ask BGH?
We got two more here. One from @Nerds of Gore. Since episode 290, has anyone other than Casey watched Todd in the Book of Pure Evil? Because there's an animated movie sequel coming this year.
I'm unfamiliar. Like, I don't recall that name at all.
Me neither.
There was a Canadian show that was on TV show for I know of 2 seasons about groups of kids in a high school. One of them a couple of them your typical metalhead, and they find the Book of Pure Evil and try and put it to work. I got drawn to it because it has co-stars Jay Muse.
Oh.
Of Jay and Silent Bob. So.
Oh, okay.
I'm familiar.
It's pretty fun though. It's a lot like
Snoochies.
What was the metal movie that we covered late last year?
Deathgasm?
Yes. Nice.
It's right along the lines of that. So
look at these young people with like snappy memory recall. What's that like?
I know.
love that movie. So.
What's it like to remember
And our
things?
final Ask BGH of the night @Blue State Pod. Did you just have a whole episode on the Purge with no commentary on how nice Schnarz's Purge compound would be?
I think I like the idea of Schnarz in like one of those creepy like president masks or something. Like everybody's got a great creepy mask in this film.
Yeah.
I think that we likened him to the dude, the ringleader in the first Purge movie.
Very much so.
Yeah,
I think.
like,
I think
just
that was
kind
like
of
half the episode.
Very Aryan, some like nice pretty blonde hair and
Aryan.
tailored suit, little bow tie, you know.
Trying to appeal to the other rich folks.
Just like our man, Mr. Schnarz.
I feel like we would all go to Schnarz's house.
Yeah, totally, yes. All right, guys. Well played. That's another episode of BGH in the books, a review of the Purge Anarchy. Next week, as discussed earlier, we're going to be talking about Hardcore Henry.
Should we take bets now on who's going to barf in the theater?
I think I'll be all right. I can handle found footage pretty well.
I've got like a 50-50 odds, so.
We were just doing Twitter. You can hit us up at BG Horror. Don't forget we're on Snapchat now, so if you're young enough to know what that means, check us out at BG Horror. Send Joe creepy pics all day long, please. We really encourage that. And Evan, Sophie, somebody, what's coming up with Tweet with BGH?
Tweet with BGH will be this Sunday, April 10th at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're watching Urban Legends, and there is a drinking game for you to play along on bloodygoodhorror.com.
Delightful. All right,
Very
guys.
nice.
That's going to do it. Thank everybody for joining me here. The Purge Anarchy. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll talk to you next week.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye-bye.